Some of those homes that we're seeing too, we're seeing a lot more multi-generational living now because young people don't have the same buying power.
Hey everyone! I am so excited to have Hunter Evans and Kimberly Johnston today of the Kimberly Johnston Group. I have worked with Kimberly for almost 20 years, and I have known Hunter since he was a small child. And he is now joined Kimberly's group as a second generation realtor. And I'm so excited to talk to them today. Everything real estate. Hopefully you're going to get a ton of great information out of them. I know I always do when we talk. So let's get into it. Tell everybody a bit about yourself. How did you get into real estate? What sparks your continual passion for what you do?
So first of all, you have to love to work with all different kinds of people in all different ages. So for me, it was never about like, I love houses. It was more about the relationship part of it. And also when I was younger, I bought a house when I was 20. I loved the whole aspect of it. I loved, everything about the business. And so my dream was to be a broker, but back in those days, so I'm dating myself, late 80s, early 90s, when I was still in my 20s and people didn't take you as seriously as they do now, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So it was more challenging back then. But
Sure.
I mean, the main reason that I got excited about is because of, the long-term wealth, building your portfolio, all those things. And then I was like, if I can do it, then I can help other people do it. And it's super rewarding.
Yeah.
And now Hunter's in the business with me, and it's so exciting that he's so passionate about it like I was and have been. And after 35 years, here I am. And now Hunter, how long have you had your license now?
3 years.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, and you've always been interested in real estate, and you've always worked with your mom in her business. Like you would go to her open houses and help her with her clients. We've always known that you were going to join, and it's super exciting to see your launch. But I would love to hear from you. What are some of the things that you have always loved about it?
Well, thank you for saying that. And first of all, I'm so glad we have the chance to sit down and do this because this has been in the works for a while.
Yes, it has
and
been.
I
Yes.
recently just graduated the University of Washington a couple of months ago. So I got my Bachelor of Science in real estate. I was super passionate about it. And that showed me a whole different world towards the investment side, the commercial side. And I was so grateful for that exposure because from a young age, I've been doing open houses. I've been around real estate my whole life. It's in my blood. And what my mom has showed me that I'm really grateful for is the business is about relationships and it's about the way you make people feel special, right? So getting to do that firsthand and learn from someone that has so much experience and is such a professional, but that I can also call mom, has been an amazing relationship as what now we grow in our professional relationship, versus mom and son. So it's been a great aspect. And I think if you can work with your family well, which we've been able to do, it just opens a world of possibilities. And I'm really excited for the longevity of this.
It's like getting bonus time because when I remember when I got in the business and I got to work with my dad. First of all, it's rare that parents and kids work well together because it's not always a given. But I remember my dad always would talk about it as bonus time because as kids grow up, as we grow up and we leave the house, we go out in our careers, they don't get to see us. But yet when you work together, it's extra time that you will always treasure, that you get this time with each other. And it will be just so gratifying that you get to work together. And the fact that to be able to learn from a veteran who really knows what they're doing, because real estate is absolutely, and lending is one of those professions where people just don't realize, it really, really matters who you work with. I wanted to go back to, you had mentioned that you bought a house at 20.
Right.
Tell me a little bit about that.
So it was actually competitive, if you can believe it, because
Really?
this was in the late 80s.
Oh my gosh.
The interest rates were 10.5%. At that time, they had like programs, like the state had programs which would help you. It's the state bond program, which help you reduce your interest rate.
Yeah.
So there was like, that was being taken up. So I was like one of the last people that got part of that, you know,
Like
provided
one of the
for
grant
me.
programs.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I was actually multiple offers, one other person. And back then you didn't even do inspections. Like no one even suggested that.
Wow.
Right?
You just
They're
bought
just
the
like,
house,
you just
like-
buy it, you get a little bit competitive. And then I was just like, the broker that I worked with, I reached out to so many brokers and no one would pay attention to me. This is when you would have the newspaper for the
Yes.
ads. Now I'm really dating myself. I'm like,
I remember you'd say, yeah, when we would still look at the
Right?
newspaper. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's where it would come out.
Yeah,
in
and
the
I
Sunday, the
finally
Seattle
got a
Times.
real estate broker to take me seriously. I said, I want to buy a house. I'm 20. At that time, I was working a full-time job. And he said, he had like 5 kids. And he says, no, I understand. I think it's great. I'll work with you. And so I just had such a great experience with him. And then that's when I was like, okay, I know I want to invest in real estate, but not only have a primary, but I want rentals for my portfolio as time goes by.
Yes.
And then I just like the experience, and I was like, you know, eventually it's hard. It's a hard career to get into because of how we're compensated, and so you kind of have to have a little bit of a nest egg before you take the leap.
Yeah,
You know, kind of
for sure.
thing. So then I was just like, I was part-time a little bit, and then I finally went full-time, and here I am.
Yeah. What was what job were you doing when you bought the
I
house?
was a licensed optician, so I went to
Oh,
school for
okay.
that, and I liked it. And back then, this is so weird to say, I made $40,000 a year, which back then was a lot of money, right? And I said, if I can just make the move, full-time real estate, and just make $40,000 a year, I would be happy, because it wasn't about the money. It was more about the career part of it and doing something I could be passionate about for
Yeah.
myself and for my clients.
Yeah.
So that I got into it for the right reasons. I feel it's different now, and people make it, you know, like, oh, I'm just going to get in for this reason, right? And that's what I appreciate about Hunter, is because he really can communicate with, as you know, you've known him since how old was he?
6.
Yeah.
He was 6.
Yeah. So
Yes.
he's been able to communicate with people from, you know, his own age up to one of my
Yeah.
neighbors. She's over 90. She's loves him. So it's all about the people skills. But like Hunter said, it's always making people feel important. You always have to put the client first.
Yeah.
That's the most important,
Always.
you know, takeaway. What's best for them, you know, listen to their needs, but also direct them, because they do need direction and they really want that. You know, so there's a lot of, you know, consulting and everything that goes with it. And that's why you and I team up so well, because we have those conversations together and with our clients. And right now it's so imperative, because the market has changed so much. It's so competitive. We have a shortage of inventory. Now you're starting to see the floodgates open, where you're getting more buyers at the same time. People have been on pause for 2 years, and
Yep.
now everyone's jumping in at the same time.
Yep.
And you have to have a good team, because we just got an offer accepted because you and I were on the team, and the other broker, it was multiple offers, and she put more weight on who we were. We weren't even the highest offer. I don't even know if I remember telling you that.
And that's that.
Yeah.
I don't think I got that piece, because we were so back and forth trying to figure out
Because
how
we
we
were
were
just
going to
like,
be
right?
unique to get this for the client.
Yeah.
But this is the thing. Consumers don't realize it really matters who you work with as your real estate agent and as your lender.
You always say that, and
because
it's so
it's
true.
all relationships. These as agents, I mean, you expand on this, but I know you guys all network. Just like as lenders, we network. I mean, it's a small industry, like a lot of industries are. We all know each other, and we all have reputations. We've worked together for a long time. And it's a relationship business. And so when there's
100%.
multiple offers coming in, and there's so much more that goes into how an offer gets accepted. I would love to have you really get into that, because I think that's a superpower you have. You have such a great way of really being able to, you have such a great intuition on what the other side and getting those details on what is going on the other side, so that when you craft that offer and you go in for the negotiation, you know exactly what needs to be done to be able to go and get that for your client.
Right.
I would love you to go into that, because
Yeah.
I don't think a lot of people realize.
Thank you for noticing that. And that's
yeah.
something that I'm, teaching Hunter as we go through this process, and he's grasping all these ideas quickly, which is amazing. But I think the first and foremost, what people don't realize is what you just said about relationships and also mutual respect. So I know a lot of the brokers, some of them I don't know, sometimes they know my name, but it's as soon as you think that your client may be interested in that, you have to take that extra time to pick up the phone.
Yeah.
There's too many people texting or emailing. They're not even communicating. You can't get that same, it's invaluable. You cannot get that same information from a text or an email.
Yeah.
And it's your time, it's spent well, because even if your clients decide not to go with that house, you've still cultivated that relationship maybe for another transaction, right?
Yeah,
With
for
the other
sure.
brokers. And I always take their lead, right? But we always introduce ourselves. We talk about our working with you as for several years and our success stories. So they already have that background, because what happens is if they start getting multiple offers and multiple calls, and there's a week that goes by, and half the time they'll stop answering their phone if they're
Yes,
inundated.
they're getting bombarded.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So we always start the relationship at the very beginning. And really, you and I have done so many over the last several years of multiple offers. It's so nail biting too. And we usually, our success rate has been.
We are.
I want to
'Cause
say
you laid the groundwork.
99.9% of the first time. I think there was one we had to go a couple more times with the first time home buyer, but I feel like most of the time we get it the first time around.
And it's a lot of it's the groundwork
Right.
that you lay, because it's interesting, because as lenders, we obviously see a lot of different styles. The thing that always amazes me is the style that I'll see, unfortunately too often, is I'll just get CC'd on an email of an offer where the agents just emailed over. It's a multiple offer situation.
Right.
And the agent representing my buyer I'm working with just emails it over and CCs me on it. Like, not with a personal touch. Like, a lot of times there hasn't even been a phone call that took place. And a lot of times when it's like that, we don't end up getting it.
Right.
And then I see styles like yours. It's always the personal touch, calling that agent, developing that relationship, finding out about what is important to their seller,
Right.
the property, what is this all about? Like, what can we do to work together? And I've just always felt like that from the outside, that's
Right.
your superpower, that it sounds simple, but I'm surprised how few agents actually use that personal touch.
And something that's been amazing too to see is really hone in on the boots on the ground approach, right? Like, we are out in the field picking up what's going on in the market. We're constantly talking to other brokers, trying to get the best for our clients, but also figuring out what the market is saying, and the market speaks. You're not going to find out what the market's doing if you're sitting at your house, right? Working from home.
No.
So we're always
Yeah.
out there, and it's about adapting to your clients' needs, but also knowing that if they want this house, you need to get them in there yesterday. Because
Yeah.
you don't have the time to sit there and wait and call back and forth. And so that's always why, we call listing brokers before we show the property to make sure that our clients have a fighting chance. Because in this
Right.
market, you really need that.
Right.
Yeah, that's imperative.
Oh, absolutely. Well, and the thing is too, you are a Gen Zer. What's interesting though is we've always thought you were way beyond your age. Like, when you were 6, you were going on 16. And we're like,
Hey, I'm still
Hunter,
22.
yes. And in some ways,
still the same.
you're more responsible than we are sometimes.
Right.
What I think is interesting, though, is you're so good with really understanding the ways and adapting to multiple generations, whether it's your own friends in your generation, or whether it's, Gen X, boomers. I would love to hear from you, Hunter, like, coming into real estate at a time where, technology's just been pushed the last 20 years. And technology because you've grown up with it. We've had to learn it. I don't think have been alive when there wasn't an iPhone
Right.
or
I
a
was,
computer.
not by a lot,
I
though.
guess you were born before the iPhone. But there's always been cell phones.
Right.
And I would love to hear from you. Like, what do you think some of the differences are? And yet some of the similarities and things that you don't think will change.
I mean, like anything with communication, I think technology is a powerful tool, right? And amidst generations, everyone's figuring out how to use it. I think my generation has the leg up on understanding the technology out of the bat, but sometimes we may need to work on picking up the phone and communications. I've seen with some of the younger agents too, that they like to do things in very untraditional ways. Something that I think is pretty unique about my generation is, we can be kings and queens of the internet and have access to everything at our fingertips, but you're really tailoring and customizing your content the way you see it, right? We have all different algorithms across platforms. We all have different news sources and outlets, and we all have different ways that we get information. So it is about appealing to generations, but it's also back to our basics. It's about honing in on those relationships and figuring out what makes someone feel special, because that's how you're going to connect with them. And at the end of the day, connection isn't going to go away. So figuring out roundabout ways and how to use tools like technology to further promote that communication is, I think, what I'm trying to figure out right now.
Yeah. You nailed it with the people want to feel special, and everybody is special. Everyone's their own unique person, and they're each individually special, but everyone wants to feel like they are special. And when they go to buy the largest investment in most people's lives, it's scary, it's exciting, all at the same time. They don't want to sound stupid. So they don't ask a lot of questions. That's a lot of times we have to really get the questions out of them because they're afraid to ask, because they don't want to come across like they look stupid, which they don't. And we have to tell them that, look, ask us, because there's no stupid questions. Like, please ask. But a lot of times it's a fear people have that.
And it's such a good point, and that's why we're here, right? Because both you and I and Kimberly are all advocates for our clients and can guide them down that path where they do feel, safe enough to ask those questions. And something we always do too in the beginning is always ask, what's most important to you?
Right.
How can we be that best advocate for you, and really tailor our approach to each individual client? Because everyone's different. So, in this era too, it's all about customization and figuring out what makes someone want to work with you and how best we can be there to support them.
It's the most important thing. Like what, and the thing that's interesting is, I know I ask that same question when I'm interviewing a new client. And I think a lot of people would think that the number one thing people say is, oh, it's the interest rate. It's not. Like 9 times out of 10, that's not the most important thing that clients tell you that they want in that transaction. They want to know, they're worried they won't qualify. They're worried they won't get approved.
Right.
And so the most important thing to them is that I want to get approved so that when I find that home I really love, I'm going to be able to close. Of course, they obviously want a great deal. That goes without saying. But the most important thing to them is they're going to have their hand held, and they're going to feel confident going through the process and be able to get into that house that they want to buy.
There's so much pressure right now for the younger generation. It's really hard for me to watch. And so it's just you really have to hold their hand. They really have to trust that you have their best interest, no matter what the outcome is, right?
Yeah.
And there are a lot of times they have to waive things now, as we all know. It's hard, if it's multiple offers and there's no seller procured inspection, you have to ask we don't recommend for you to waive it, but you're competing and 2 other buyers are waiving it.
Right.
So, because we usually will get all of the information we can, and then we'll lay it out to our clients, and then just say, these are things you have to be comfortable with. We're not pressuring you, but if you are, then your chances are greater. But again, that's a lot of pressure because they have to make quick decisions. Hunter can go take someone to show him the house, and the broker's like, we just got an offer. So we're telling our clients, we just did this a couple weeks ago where I professionally beg very well. And I always say, right?
Begging.
Yeah. And
awesome.
I said, could you please just give us, 4 hours and we'll put an offer together. It was our clients for the townhome.
Oh,
right?
yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And because I said, this is a
Yes.
great investment. Anything that Hunter and I do, we're advocates for the client. So we look at it as like, is that something we would buy either as a primary or it's ultimately their decision, but that's how we look at it. That's how seriously we take it.
Yeah.
So after we knew
Yeah.
this other offer came in, it was just like, oh no. And I knew this was the right investment property for them. So and because they were really busy with their schedules, and you were able to come in right away with your team and pre-approve them. And I was like, sorry, Carice, but I need you to do this right now.
Yes.
And see, that's the part about the
Yeah.
team. It's not always easy. And it's sometimes because then you have to all of a sudden reprioritize your day. You might have already had something else, and now you got to slip this in. And that's the way it's a team. That's why we're so loyal to our
that's
team.
why we're concierge.
Right.
We're concierge.
Exactly.
And I think the
Yeah.
three of us can all respect to the sense of urgency that
Right.
our job
Yes.
requires,
Yeah.
because a lot of times
Yes.
we don't have a lot of warning, we don't have a lot of
No.
prep time, and we go
No.
into it and
Right.
the results speak for
Yeah.
themselves. But both of you, I've noticed, really tailor your approach to what the clients need from you,
Right.
and you'll put your own needs on hold at times to make
Yeah.
sure it gets done. So I really
Yeah.
respect that.
Well, and these clients, it's not like they're buying starter homes. That's the thing that shifted. I've noticed a lot in the last 20 years is it
That's a
used to
good
be that first-time home buyers would go
Yeah.
start with a condo,
Right.
or a townhome. Well, their starter home now is $1 million. So it's a
Right.
big jump. It's like they're kind of skipping the starter home and going for the move up home first. And they have to kind of think longer term, like, oh, I need to pick a home that I'm likely going to be in for, 10 years versus maybe 20 years ago. It would have been, well, I'll start with the home I'm going to be in 3 to 5 years, and then I'll parlay that equity and buy that next home. And that's an interesting shift
And-
that,
I was going to say 20 years ago, people weren't
Yes.
locked into really low rates like they are all
Right.
across the state right
That's
now.
such a good point.
And we saw a
Yeah.
great economist the other week too, telling us the average age of a first-time home buyer now in Washington State is 38 years old.
I was actually really shocked.
yes,
To hear that.
it is. And the thing about it is, and Hunter, I'm guessing they probably covered this in your in school, but statistically, a person buying a house in their 20s, like at 20 years old when you bought it, I was around the same age when I bought my first home.
Right.
A person buying a home at 19 or 20 years old will retire with a lot more money than somebody who buys their first home in their 30s or their 40s. And that
story.
38 has increased over the last 5 years. It started like where it was in the early 30s, like 31, 32 was the average age. It's now 38. So if you look at the statistics that are out on that, those people are going to have a harder time growing wealth
Right.
versus that the people that started in their 20s. So the question becomes like, how do we help shift people so that people of your generation get into these homes and, whatever the tools are, and realizing to get them into these homes in their 20s, because they've got a much better shot at really growing wealth.
Completely agree. And what we've noticed too, even in open houses, is just the lack of education surrounding real estate. One, as a long-term investment in your wealth, something that helps you grow and you can build. But two is also realizing that there's so many things first-time home buyers don't know. And one of those things is the 2-1 buy down that we were telling them that you do so well.
Yeah.
And a lot of them are like, tell me more, or how does that work? So there's that lack of education that I'm seeing just on the field, where once you tell people, what they're looking for, or they didn't even know what they needed,
The
they're
options.
willing to take that jump.
Yeah. And that is actually, in my opinion, the best program for the last couple of years. And it's, different programs come in and out of attractiveness depending on the market. And that 2-1 buy down has been such a key for so many clients. As long as it's a situation where you've got that flexibility with the seller, or like in your case, what we did is you were able to go in, even though it was competitive, and you were able to make it part of the offer. So we just went in right up front and got the seller credit to contribute to that 2-1 buy down. But it's saving these clients like around $1,000 a month for their
month.
first
Huge.
year,
Yeah.
and $500 for the second year. And the nice thing about it is it's a 30-year fixed loan. It's not an adjustable rate loan, so it's not going to scare people. It's just a feature that through using a seller credit, it lets them have a lower payment the first 2 years. But for a lot of people who are stretching themselves, they still have to qualify at the permanent interest rate. So that's a good thing. They have to qualify on
Right.
that. But the good news for them is a lot of times buyers, we're finding, are stretching to get into a house that's going to fit for them. And so by being able to ease into the payment, and hopefully the market will react positively and we can refinance in the next 2 to 3 years. That's what we're hoping for. No one's got the crystal ball, of
Right.
course. We always tell them that. But
Yeah.
but no, I agree with you. That 2-1 buy down has helped so many people, but it is an education process. And that's just not something people get from the internet. The internet's great to go on and get a little bit of information, but it's a little bit to be dangerous. Yeah. UW is one of the very few schools that has that real estate major program. I've always been super impressed with it. I would love you to just talk a little bit about about the program, like kind of what it went into, because I've heard incredible things about it.
And it was such a unique experience too. It's been around for 4 or 5 years as a major. People used to be able to minor in it or take real estate classes. But what I think is so important about that program is the faculty all work in the profession and most do part-time. So they really have that on the ground experience, like I mentioned, but you get all different types of backgrounds. I had professors that were real estate attorneys, professors that were in the commercial industry, professors that were brokers like myself. And they all had a really unique, rounded approach in how they taught class. No class was the same. I was exposed to investment, appraisal, commercial, and really was able to get a feel to know that I want to do residential even more, but to know that in the future, if I had the opportunity to try something, having that knowledge in the back of my mind was great. And being able to network at such a young age with other real estate professionals that know what they want to go into, it was great, because not only are we building each other up, but we're all in the same boat trying to figure it out together and really building a community, which is one of the things that I think makes that program amazing. And it's grown a lot since I started.
Yeah.
But now it's so cool to see them actually changing some of the course structure because the demand is so high now.
I was going to ask you, like, are the classes full? Like, there are waiting lists for the
Completely.
classes?
They actually have to make more classes
love
to
that.
keep up with
Great.
the demand. But I mean, that's a sign they're doing something right, and that this program is so beneficial, not only for your career, but it's great exposure. I got my license before I started college, so that wasn't something that I learned through the program, but being able to learn how to use things like pro formas and really being exposed to different volume and network of how deals work in different industries and sectors was completely invaluable, and I would not have had that if I hadn't gone there.
Well, and you're learning too about the investment side of it. That's the piece that a lot of people don't realize is the investment side of real estate. Like, one, it's an inflation hedge. So like in the environment we've been in for the last 3-4 years, we have inflation where a lot of consumer prices are going up. Well, the best hedge to inflation is real estate. And a lot of people don't realize it's a hard asset. So it moves differently. It moves differently for the most part than like the stock market will move. And it's a hard asset. So over time, if you go back in history, it appreciates. Like, I think there's only one stock, and it's Amazon, that has outpaced the real estate market over the past 30 years.
Right.
So, but the investment side of it is what a lot of people don't realize from, whether it's, you're buying that as a primary residence and then you live in it for a while, then you move out, you buy that move up property, you keep the property you're in, keep it as a rental property. And I know you have incredible experience owning rentals. Like, I would love to have you talk about that.
That's who my lender is. The last one we bought, we're kind of into the
The
multifamilies.
fourplex.
Yeah.
That was a fantastic
But
property.
you know what?
Yes.
What I really appreciated, because what people forget is, yes, we're the experts for other people, but when we're doing ourselves, it's the same.
Yes.
It's overwhelming.
Yeah.
Right? Because now all of a sudden we're an agent for ourselves, and then we want the property and it's competitive, but then we have to like make sure that, we can make the numbers work.
Yes.
Right. And then for us, it's like all about location and all those
Yeah.
things. So what I really appreciate about you is when I had that opportunity, because it came up and then it got competitive, is you literally sat down with me and you gave me all the options. You made me comfortable, so I knew what I was doing. Right. So yeah, we've had that now for 3 years? Yeah.
That was a fantastic property.
That's-
I remember I told you, if you don't buy this,
Right.
I'm going to buy it.
Yeah.
Because it's a great property.
When those
Yes.
opportunities come
Yes.
up, and I was just in a place where I could make it work, and then I was like, here's my down payment. You're like, well, you don't have to use all of it. So then that was very helpful too, right?
Well, and a lot of times with investments, you're backing into like, okay, how much of my cash do I need to put into
Right.
it? And I mean, again, everybody's going to be a little bit different, but a
Right.
lot of times it's like, okay, if you want to conserve some of your cash and buy something else or
Right.
invest that in something else, but it's figuring out what's going to cash flow. And
That's the thing.
this is a
Yeah.
market that's an appreciation market. Like you're more or less buying the rental property because you know over time it's going to appreciate. So as long as it cash flows, at least it covers the payment.
Right.
And you're not feeding it every month. That's a great thing. There's other markets where like, Texas, rural markets where properties don't appreciate as quickly, they
Right.
cash flow better. But yeah, it's been fun to see your investment buys. Like I'm always interested. Like when you ever call me and you're like, oh,
Right.
I'm looking at this
Yeah.
property. Okay, do tell me more.
We're still
because they're
looking.
so good.
Yeah,
Yes.
I have a goal this year
Yes.
too. But the main thing is what people, even if you can just, you always want positive cash flow, but even if you can just break even to start, that's what people have to mentally think about, because you're gaining that appreciation, right? The other thing that people forget is sometimes people get complacent, the landlords, and they only care about the equitable position. They don't care about the monthly, how much they get. And they just, if they have tenants that are in there long term, sometimes they'd rather just not have the hassle, but then the rents are below market. So then you have to remember, okay, when I buy it and then those tenants move out, then I can increase the rents, realistically, for both parties. But there's so many things to consider. But I mean,
Yes.
it's, if you buy things long term, our goal for our clients, especially the younger generation, is helping them get into something. And then if it's something they can hold instead of
Yes.
resell and then buy something else, they can hold on to
Yes.
that as an investment and then go to the next property.
Yeah.
And be able to use their equity within that on
Right.
a potential HELOC
Yeah.
loan if they wanted to keep that as well, which
Yeah.
I know you're super
That's what
familiar
we
with.
really love to see, because like you said, that's the way to build your wealth and portfolio at a younger age.
Well, real estate's a long-term approach. The
Right.
flipping, it's just not realistic. I mean, there's some people that are really, really good at it.
Right.
You have to really understand the math.
Right.
And the market. And you have to be almost like impeccable with how you're picking those properties and figuring out what needs to be done. And things always come up. That's the thing. I mean, I've definitely learned that on
The margins aren't good
Yes,
anymore because there's
they're
so
not.
many investors trying to find flips. So then you
Yes.
don't get the really good deals anymore, right?
No.
Because then it's competitive.
Yeah.
So unless you're doing the work for yourself, right?
Yes.
The supply chain's gone up, labor costs have gone up, all those things that people don't consider.
Well, and that's where you have to get creative and find out what options are most important to you. Is the remodel in the
Right.
kitchen more important than
Right.
the remodel in the bathroom?
Right.
Exactly.
And go from there. But just getting your foot in the door is so
Yes.
important to building that long-term wealth.
The foot in the door, I think, is the key. It's really like the key. And the thing that's I think is interesting is as we go into 2025 and we're now back in competitive offer situations on single family homes and townhomes, it starts to make condos really attractive again. Like I've been saying for the last couple of years, I tell every first time home buyer, I'm like,
Right.
buy a condo. Like condos are approachable. You can go in, negotiate on a condo. I think people overlook them.
You and Hunter just did that with one of
Yes.
your Hunter's clients, right? You
Yes.
guys just did that, and
Yep,
they
in
were so
December.
excited, and they
Yeah.
sometimes you start out in one location, but then you have to, spread out and find something that's going to make more sense. Because you're still going to get the appreciation, but it still has to make sense for your monthly payment, right?
Yeah. So as we've seen real estate evolve, obviously it's always changing and it's market based. I would love your thoughts on how you both think like the next 5 to 10 years. Like, what do you see as what will change, what will stay the same? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
I don't think our area is going to slow down anytime soon. I mean, there's no doubt that we're in a very hot market here. And I think it becomes about, because the demand is clearly there. We still have a shortage of inventory that we're trying to get back. We're hopeful that the spring brings more on. But the reality is, the next 5 or 10 years, we're really going to see what brokers and lenders stick around, because you have to become solution oriented and really adapt at every turn to stay in this market. It's not like it was 10, 20 years ago. We've become a major city here. And there's more people coming than we know what to do with. And we just don't have the land for huge new developments or pieces. We can't create land that isn't there. So I think it's going to be about getting really creative for your clients and figuring out how to adapt in ways that we haven't seen before. And we're going to. Luckily, technology is a tool that we can leverage to help inform us. But that boots on the ground experience that I keep going back to is what you need, and we're only going to know when I'm out there seeing what's in the market, and it comes right at us.
The other thing I've noticed too is that the baby boomers, and it kind of goes into the silent generation, because one of my clients, I just adored him. This was like a year and a half ago. You helped with Peter. So essentially he was been in the same house for 60 years and his family was like, Dad, it's time to move. Right. He was living there by himself. It's over 3,000 square feet. And so he finally kind of made the decision to do it, but he'd been there 60 years and he's still to this day, he still snow skis. He still drives.
So very active.
I think he might even be 97 now.
Wow.
Like, he's the most amazing human. He used to be a figure skater too with his sister, so I don't even know. You and I will have another conversation about that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, what's happening is people are staying healthier longer, and they don't want to leave their homes where they raise their children and all those different things. And if they're still able to like live a good healthy life and still be mobile and everything. And so that's the other thing, where it used to be the boomers would downsize and now they're waiting much longer, so we don't have that pool of sellers right now. And then the local economists are saying it was 75% of homeowners, I think nationally too, are 5% or less on their interest rates. And that is making people hold on longer, making sacrifices. Even if they're outgrowing their house, they're holding on because the payment, like they're not going to get it back. Is a situation. So, to Hunter's point, this is the part of the...
And that causes our inventory issue.
Right.
And I've also noticed too, with what Kimberly was saying, was some of those homes that we're seeing too, we're seeing a lot more multi-generational living now, because young people don't have the same buying power, right? And the income isn't keeping up with where things need to be to make the monthly payments. So I think we're going to start seeing a lot more young people my age too. They might have to move in, to their childhood home for a while.
Did you want to tell me something? I'm just checking.
You wish. I like the flexibility though that this allows for things like a mother-in-law unit, or things like you're transforming a different level of a home to fit a different need. And so homes are going to adapt to what people actually need.
The ADUs now, the zoning is...
with these zoning changes, like, do you foresee that we'll see quite a few people choose to modify their lots, build ADUs?
Absolutely.
Completely. And I've seen it myself. I went to a few Bellevue City Hall Council meetings, and there's a lot of demand, let's just say. And it's now more about implementation, because the plans have already passed. So now people and homeowners, it's up to them as individuals deciding what they want to put on their property. But the zoning is there, and the need for it is clearly there too. So we are going to start seeing that.
One
Yeah.
of the things that, and I'm not sure if some of this is implemented yet, maybe in parts of Seattle, but I'm also understanding that they may be able to separate them as separate tax parcels. I don't know if they can do that now, but I feel like if they're not doing that now, it could be in the future.
Yes.
Right? Because most of them are on one tax parcel.
I had the first one that came up in Kirkland 2 months ago. And yes, it was separated on 2 different tax parcels. They condominiumized it. Like currently they're having to
right.
condominiumize it.
That makes sense.
I've heard rumblings that is going to change. They're going to take that requirement out because when you condominiumize, then you get into condo rules for financing. And the legislature didn't kind of realize that
Right.
when it went into effect. And so it causes other challenges. I have heard, we'll see if this is what they end up doing, but I've heard that they're looking to modify to where they're not going to require the condominiumization of
Right.
it, but they'll allow you to put the multiple units with different tax parcels.
Right.
Which wouldn't that's going to make the land become really
Right.
valuable.
Yeah,
It's going to
absolutely.
increase the price of the land, right? Because it's got more opportunity.
Completely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think that's pretty interesting. One of the things that, because to your point, Hunter, with your generation, the challenge is a down payment. And moving it back in with the parents, they can save money, get the
so
down
true.
payment saved up, get into that house.
Right.
One of the things that I've been trying to get the word out on, and I didn't even realize this until I've been going through all the estate info with my parents passing away, is that a lot of people do not realize that they can gift their kids. If they, the
right.
boomer is, and I can't quote the statistic, but I've
Right.
heard the boomer generation it's like one of the largest group of people with wealth. It's like it's going to be the largest wealth transfer over the next few years. But a lot of them have not given any money to their kids yet. They're waiting until they actually pass away. Whereas they could, of course, everyone should talk to their
Right.
estate attorney, their
Right.
tax accountant.
Absolutely, yeah.
I have to put that disclaimer in there.
Right.
I'm not a CPA and I'm
Right.
not an attorney.
Yeah.
But in my own experience, parents could pass money to their kids as a gift more than just the yearly limit. And they don't have to pay taxes on that money unless they've given unless they've exceeded their lifetime limit, which is like 13 million. Every one of us in the US, based on the 2025 lifetime limit, it's like $13 million. Like, so you could gift out $13 million. You could gift out $13 million over your lifetime to anybody in gift. You just have to report it. But the donor doesn't pay taxes and the recipient doesn't have to pay taxes
Right.
on it. So these parents could gift their kids money for the down payment with a warm hand versus waiting till they pass on. And it's not.
We've actually seen that.
Yeah.
In the last
It's
year
a
with
great
someone.
And people are starting to
Don't
wake
wait.
up to that,
If
I
you
think.
don't wait until let your kids. I mean, it's a
Yeah.
beautiful thing, right? It's to
Well, and
watch.
it gives them a jump start
Yeah.
to get them into real estate
Right.
prior to 38 years old.
Right.
Where they've lost a lot of time.
right.
You
Yeah.
can't get the time back.
No.
Yeah, you can't
And
get
you
the
can't
time
take
back.
it. The boomers. I'm a boomer. You can't take it with you.
Can't take it with you.
right?
No, you come into this world the same and you go out of this world
There's
the same.
so many people that all
Yes.
they think about is like, what am I going to leave for my children? But then they don't get to see the celebration of it, right?
Yes.
So maybe
Yes.
if the word gets out and more boomers knew that, like, you can gift your child money and still benefit
Yes,
from it
and
in
still
both ways,
benefit.
right? Yeah.
Yes, I mean, I am encouraging people. When I go through my process with every client that I work with, I bring that up. And I don't know why I didn't until just a couple years ago, but it's
Right.
been through my own experience. I bring this up with every one of them. Have you talked to your parents about estate planning? You really should go and speak with an attorney, estate attorney,
Right.
tax planning CPA, so that you can really be set up for success and maximize their wealth. Because these are conversations we should be having with people.
Right. It's multifaceted. The thing I like about you too is because you learned so much from your dad, and then you've had so much of your own experience. But I love that when you help our clients, like it's not just I'm going to do the loan. It's like, here's all your options. What are you most comfortable with? Oh, you have an investment property. What about doing an LLC? Oh, this is what this looks like. This is what this means for your protection.
Yeah.
I have a person I can refer you to. So I like how we can get involved with the clients and help them more than just, selling them a property or doing the more. We love to be, Hunter and I love being the resources.
It's
for
a
our
whole,
clients.
it's a whole of team approach.
Right.
People, this isn't their expertise. That's what they're coming to us for. And they want to be guided. And
Absolutely.
there's stuff they're not thinking about.
Right.
There's so much. It's like after somebody becomes a homeowner, there's so many things now that come into play. Like they need to really think about insurance. Like they should have a great insurance agent so that they can make sure that they are covered, because now they own a home, they have liability. Somebody trips and falls in the home. A lot of
Right.
people don't realize that.
Yeah.
Life insurance. Maybe there's one breadwinner in the household, and if that person passed away, is there enough funds that they could stay in that house, pay off the mortgage? Life insurance.
Right.
Financial advisors, all
Right.
of these things, to your point.
And on a basic level too, right? We've had people reach out to us where things break in the house, things go wrong, and we love to be that resource for our clients too, because being there for them after the transaction too is paramount for them to feel comfortable in the investment they just made, and for us to keep that relationship with them and stay in front of them as their realtor. But the biggest compliment, Kimberly always says this too, the biggest compliment that we receive and the most rewarding part about what we do is getting that referral, right? Because your referrals are the lifeblood of sales.
Oh, for sure.
And without that, there is no future. So we really try to make sure every client feels super satisfied with their experience. And I know you do the same. So I feel like that's a testament to a great track record.
Oh, the best compliment
Yeah.
is when the client refers you, their friend or their family, or they come back.
Yeah.
That's the best. The repeats are the best.
One of the things I've tried to teach Hunter too is that whenever clients call you, friends, family, prioritize, make them feel important, even if it's not going to be you're not getting paid for it, but you're doing a service for them.
Yeah.
And they
Yep.
so appreciate it. And don't put it off to the side. Make that just as important as anything else. And I've always been a proponent of that. And people notice that.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Because
They
most
notice when
people
you
don't
care.
want to do anything unless they're being compensated at that time, right? You have to look at the bigger picture for sure.
100%. People know when you care.
Right.
And they'll beat a path to your door when they realize you genuinely care.
Right.
And that's something like you've always been so great with your client relationships and the trust that you build with them. How is that? Like, has that changed over the years? Or like, what kind of lessons have you learned through the industry or just through life that has kind of maybe changed it, or had you modified your approach?
I don't think it's really changed, because it's always like Hunter said, make the person feel important, VIP, like make each person feel like they're your only client. Like you never tell somebody, oh, I'm too busy or I'm this or that. When you make time for you, carve time. And if something comes up, you say, let me get back to you. Does this work for you? Right? So I don't think it's really changed. I think it's more, everything's now relationship based, and the trust is more imperative than anything, especially when people are being pushed into purchasing. They still have to feel like, oh, if there's something maybe, and something's not right, if there's something wrong with the house, am I still protected? There's so many nuances, because a lot of times they're even giving up their good faith earnest money.
Yes.
Right? I always
Yes.
call you and I was like, Carice,
are we solid?
Yeah, because
Yeah.
I'm just like, I feel like, I have to give them the advice, but then they have to make the final decision.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. Well, and that goes to the pressure that you were talking about, because especially the younger generation buying their first homes, they're under so much pressure, like
Right.
they got to be quick, they got to waive financing, waive inspection,
Right.
release the earnest money.
It's just so much
Yes.
pressure
And
for
these are
people.
things that you
Yeah.
need real professional guidance on, and teams to
Yeah.
support you, because you need that
Yeah.
support, right? But also there's so
Yeah.
many overwhelming things to learn about our market, right? Which is why we position ourselves as being hyper local here, because we've seen it. But
Yes.
someone that's not from here or is moving
Right.
from here has no idea what
They
they're
have.
stepping into.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
They
So
have-
without
yeah.
that representation and professional guidance, you really are being thrown to the wolves.
Right.
Totally. Yeah. Oh, yeah, no doubt. You know, one of the things, because you have such a unique experience having grown up in the industry, and I identify with that because I was the same way. When you think ahead to like kind of how you're going to make yourself stand out, like what are kind of some of the things you're thinking about, and ways that you're going to differentiate yourself?
I'm always super focused on how I can adapt, right? So leveraging my education experience and also my passion for the business from a super young age has been kind of at the heart of driving what I do. And I always like to set goals for myself to keep myself not only accountable, but super fresh. So my next goal is to become a managing broker and hopefully have more support in our team in a few more years.
Yeah.
But I'm currently studying for that, and I have my sights set on that to make sure that I position myself in a way where I'm experienced, but I also have the capacity to manage others and help others in different ways, right? And so the cool thing about UW too was there was no shortage of opportunity. So having access to that alumni network has been amazing.
Yes.
And the opportunities that come with that just by knowing people are insane. So keeping myself open to the possibility of other real estate opportunities outside of residential is going to be
Yes.
paramount, not only for longevity, but just to keep myself engaged and really focused and on learning as much as I can, because I love real estate and I always will.
Well, and the commercial market, it's going to be really interesting over these next few years because with, you know, some companies are requiring people to go back to work, but go back to the office.
Right.
But a lot of companies have really shifted and stayed more remote. And there's a lot of empty office
Completely.
buildings. So to me, I have no idea what it is, but there's got to be a lot of opportunity.
There is. One of the hardest things that we learn too with office space is converting that to residential, right? Because you need plumbing, proper kitchen, fanning. And once those buildings have been built, you can't undo that build. And sometimes the cost to demo doesn't make sense with the numbers. So a lot of these kind of ghost spaces that we refer to them as just being completely vacant, there is room for a lot of opportunities. So from an investment perspective, it's great because you can get in on these huge buildings for way lower prices than we'd ever have in the past because the office market is down, right? So
Yeah.
whenever things are down, there's opportunity and investment purpose there. So I think sometimes, you know, they might not be able to convert the building to residential, but if that building comes back as office space later, whoever got in on that opportunity now is really going to capitalize when it may be
makes
5 days a
sense.
week again.
Yes. Yeah, because everything shifts. You know, things, it's like the pendulum always shifts. And
Right.
it very well, companies might look at things 5 years from now and go, wait, productivity, it really does make a difference. And they could require people to go back in. So do you think that investors may go in and they'll buy and just hold those buildings for a while and kind of see what's going to happen in the market? And
Yeah,
some of this,
I think
yeah.
that would be a possibility. I do see a shift coming back, right? With work culture, especially young people getting into jobs after college, they are going into the office, right? Because
Okay.
We've
you
seen
can't scale the ladder from Zoom at home.
Right.
So you need to be able to learn, right? I have a great mentor here, but as a young person, that experience comes with learning from other people, and education is so valuable, but that in-field experience is really what you need. And most of the working professionals that we see from home now have that experience they can pull from. As young
Right.
people, we don't have that yet.
No.
So we need to be in the field and on the ground. So I think those spaces are really going to come back into play, especially for my next
makes
generation,
sense.
for the workforce, right?
Yeah.
That's a great point. I had not thought about I had not thought about that. You bring up a very, very good point. Because yes, like people coming out of college, like I would never be where I'm at today if I hadn't been going into the office for
Right.
years and years and learned
Yeah.
from people. You spent time in your office.
Right.
But
That
so
was the
do you
culture.
find like your friends that are going out into the work world, like they're
Mm-hmm.
eager to go into an office? They want that work environment. They don't mind
are.
going into an office.
Not at all. And while a hybrid
Interesting.
approach is beneficial for some, I
Yeah.
actually see a lot of my friends too prefer that in-person experience. And because it is invaluable, but there's also so much joy they get, when they go into work versus like doing work from your bedroom after college
Yes.
isn't the most exciting
No.
thing, right? So being able to network and put yourself out there, people will jump at the chance. And especially I saw it too through my college classes, but people are excited to show up, especially when there's opportunity, and everyone is so ready for that shift to go back.
Right. Makes
Yeah.
sense.
Well, then that's amazing, because then that will shift. That will shift the commercial markets back into. So maybe it's time to start looking for commercial buildings now.
I know, right?
Yes.
Can
Yeah,
wear a
for
few
sure.
investment hats.
I can't believe I had never thought about that, but you're exactly right. I mean, if you're coming out of college and you're entering the workforce, I mean, I remember how excited I was. I wanted to dress up and go into the office, and you're excited about talking to people and lunch and learning stuff. And
Right.
yeah, and that makes total sense
Yeah.
that people
Right. I mean,
would
I
do
can
that.
speak for myself too. I love going in the office now because not only is it great relationship building for yourself, but you have such a different lens of support with people that want to help you immediately
Yes.
versus
Right.
if they don't know you, they're not as inclined to maybe
Yes,
respond as
the
fast, right? Or
connection.
when you get CC'd on those emails that you mentioned and someone doesn't pick up the phone to call you,
Yeah.
there's less
Right.
of a sense of urgency. So having the support staff has just been invaluable.
Yeah.
And then being able to do things remotely for Kimberly if she needs it, I'm right there, and I'm excited and I'm eager to do it.
Yeah. What are some of the common mistakes you see buyers and sellers make in this market? And kind of what are the things you do to help them avoid the traps?
I think right now, like over the past few years, is the common mistake that both buyers and sellers are putting things on hold. They're putting things on pause because they think this is going to change or the rates are going to go down because it's things they hear in the marketplace, and they're losing opportunities. Especially with
Yep.
the buyers. Yeah, if the rates are, you can always refinance, but the longer you put it off,
Yeah.
the higher the prices are going to be. Then you're going to get into the multiple offer situation. So I think that's the greatest thing I see is that people are just putting things on pause. Some sellers are, well, I want to stay in my house longer, but then it's just like, well, wait, you might want to take advantage of this part of the market because this season, you're going to get a little more, or here you're going to have less competition. We can always, give them the information. They still have to make those decisions. But I haven't seen this for a while where so many people are just on pause. They don't know which direction to go. So then they just wait and keep waiting.
I've also seen in this day and age, we have a lot more transparency with real estate, which I think is great.
Right.
And buyers and sellers have had access to things that they never had before, super popular sites where people can get on and make themselves an expert about the home, which is great. But on the flip, they're
They think they're the
experts
expert on the
and they aren't in the profession. And it's different,
Yeah.
right? There's a different lens of
day-to-day.
information that you have versus as a realtor, we know how transactions go and we know what we've seen in the market. And buyers and sellers get so hyper focused on one specific property or one specific way that it should be done. And you really do have to get creative
Yeah.
and lean into professional help at times,
Right.
even though you think you may know all the information.
Yeah, that's a very really good
No,
point.
that's exactly. There's great information out there on the internet, and I think it's wonderful. People are educating themselves, but there's just enough info that makes people dangerous. If they use the information, then they come and talk to us as professionals. I think it's great. It's wonderful. But yeah, the do-it-yourself doesn't usually work out well in real estate. So I would love to hear from each of you. What is your favorite client story?
I mean, why I got
so
into the
many.
business was to help family and friends. So a story that comes to mind is a couple years ago, one of my first deals was actually helping my grandma sell her house and go into an assisted living facility. And this was at a time where the COVID market was at its peak, right? Where things were going. We wanted to get her the most money, obviously want to set my grandma up for success for the rest of her life. So I felt pressure and I felt the stakes and I want to do an amazing job. And that open house alone had over 100 people. It was such a frenzy. And had I not been there in the field, we actually would not have gotten that deal closed, because there were multiple offers and one that we were going to end up going with. Well, the buyer actually fell out last minute, and it was someone that we had faith in previously, but I had met one of the buyers there with the other offer, and I knew, I had this feeling and intuition that they were going to be a really good fit for it, and they ended up being a great fit, and it worked out that way. But having to navigate all that information and then still feeling like I did a really great job for my grandma was something that really stuck with me, because having that as one of my intro starter lessons to how to deal with this crazy market was really going to stick with me. And that feeling I felt when I called my grandma and I was like, we got you, you know, the highest and best, was
even more than we even gauged.
Yeah, it was probably the best feeling in the world. And I remember so specifically that night too, I remember turning around in my car and driving down. It was probably like 10 o'clock at night to come back to discuss with Kimberly the offer that we'd received again. We ended up getting it closed super late that night, but I knew in that moment that I was going to prioritize real estate every time.
Yeah.
I'll just piggyback on that one because that's a really good example. But this is when Hunter was more fresh in the business and he picks up on everything really quickly. What I really appreciated, and I knew that he was meant for this business, and I don't want to cry, but it was so late. We were so tired. We thought we had this one buyer. Luckily enough, we didn't, we just kind of worked the angles. And then it got so late and Hunter's like, I've got to go, and then all of a sudden we got the deal together and I called him and like he said, he turned around and came back and I was like, okay, that's commitment. That's dedication.
Yeah.
And we did have a lot of pressure because my mom was just like, I trust you guys explicitly. You guys can make all the decisions for me. And I told Hunter, this is not normally how it goes. I said, there's actually more pressure when someone says you can make the decisions for me. That's actually way more pressure than somebody else saying, okay, here's your options. Okay, I'll take option one. So no, that was a great story. And I was like, okay, he's in it. Do you know what you're doing? You're getting into
That's
this
amazing. Well, and
crazy
I feel
world.
like there are defining moments. There's
Right.
defining moments in all of our lives and
Right.
careers where it's like that was the moment that you knew, or that was the moment where it's like, okay, you've got the grit of what it takes, and you intuitively knew, like by turning around, like you knew that that's what you had to do, and that's the thing is. You can't teach that. Like that, there's things you can teach, but there's things that just come naturally.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you so much for this awesome discussion. Like it has been incredible. And I feel like I've learned so much more. And I know that our listeners are going to get so much out of this. So thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having
Yes.
us.
Oh my gosh.
Pleasure's
It's a
ours.
pleasure. Yes. And congratulations again on your graduation and
you so
launching
much.
into the industry. It's going to be incredible to watch you like grow and thrive. And I can't wait.
I'm excited.
Yes,
Let's
I
get
am
to
too.
work.
Thank you everyone so much for watching. As always, if you would like to learn more about how to grow your wealth through real estate and beyond, please subscribe to my channel and follow me on social media. And as always, reach out with any questions.